Do not watch this later. Those words are not a suggestion. They are not a marketing tactic. They are not grammatic exaggeration. They are a direct spiritual alert. Archangel Michael is sounding a warning, and it is piercing through delay, through distraction, through the comfortable lie that says, "I'll come back to this when I have more time." Because what you call later, heaven may be calling disobedience. And what feels like a harmless postponement could already be shifting something in your destiny in real time. There are moments in life that are casual, and then there are moments that are catalytic. This is not casual. This is catalytic. You did not click on this by accident. You did not stumble into this message randomly. In the spirit realm, timing is everything. And when a message arrives with this level of urgency, it means something is moving. Something is being decided. Something is either aligning or collapsing. Archangel Michael does not speak in panic. He speaks in precision. And the precision of this message is this: delay is disobedience. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when things calm down. Now. Because heaven measures obedience differently than we do. We measure it by intention. I was going to do it. I meant to pray. I planned to start. But heaven measures obedience by action. Immediate action. When instruction is given and we hesitate, something shifts. Doors that were open begin to narrow. Grace that was flowing begins to slow. Clarity that was sharp begins to blur. And here is the shocking revelation. Destiny does not collapse in one dramatic explosion. It collapses in small, almost invisible compromises. It collapses when you postpone the prompting. It collapses when you silence the conviction. It collapses when you choose comfort over command. And it happens in real time. When you think nothing is changing, everything is moving. There are spiritual windows that open for a reason and for a season. When they open, they require response. Not analysis. Not debate. Response. You may have been sensing something lately, an urgency in your spirit, a restlessness you cannot explain, a pressure to act on something you have been delaying. That is not anxiety. That is alignment trying to happen. That is heaven knocking. And when heaven knocks, it is not to be rescheduled. The danger of later is that it feels harmless. It whispers, "You have time." It says, "Nothing will happen if you wait." But Archangel Michael is exposing the truth behind that whisper. Delay is not neutral. It is a decision. And in spiritual matters, indecision is still a choice. When instruction comes and you push it aside, you are not standing still. You are drifting. And drifting in the wrong season can cost you more than you realize. Right now, something is being weighed. Something is being evaluated in the unseen realm. Not to condemn you, not to threaten you, but to awaken you. This message is not here to scare you. It is here to shake you. Because there is a difference between fear and awakening. Fear paralyzes. Awakening mobilizes. And this is your awakening. You may be thinking, what exactly am I delaying? Only you and God know that answer fully. It could be obedience in your calling. It could be ending something that heaven has already told you to release. It could be stepping into something that feels too big for you. It could be repentance you have been postponing. It could be forgiveness you keep pushing off. Whatever it is, the pattern is the same. You heard the whisper and you chose to wait. But here is the part that changes everything. Destiny is not a fixed statue. It is a living path. It responds to your choices. When you obey quickly, it accelerates. When you delay, it destabilizes. And when the title says, "Skip this message and watch your destiny collapse in real time," it is not exaggeration. It is revelation. Because ignoring instruction in critical seasons causes cracks. And cracks, if left unattended, become fractures. There are rare moments when heaven interrupts your routine. This is one of them. The urgency you feel right now is not pressure from me. It is conviction from above. The reason this cannot wait is because you are in a narrow window. A window where a single act of obedience could change the trajectory of your next year. A window where hesitation could cost you momentum you have prayed for. Archangel Michael is not accusing you. He is alerting you. He stands as a guardian of divine order, and order requires alignment. Alignment requires movement, and movement requires decision. Today is a decision point. Not tomorrow, not after another distraction. Today. The question is not whether you believe this message. The question is whether you will respond to it. Because destiny does not collapse loudly at first. It shifts quietly, subtly, gradually, until one day you look around and wonder how you got so far from what you were shown. This is the mercy moment before that drift becomes distance. Do not watch this later. Those words are an invitation and a warning wrapped together. An invitation to step into immediate obedience. A warning against casual delay. Heaven is not rushing you without reason. Heaven is urging you because something significant is at stake. And if you are hearing this with a trembling in your spirit, that is confirmation. You are not being condemned. You are being called higher. This is the line in the sand. This is the moment where destiny either stabilizes or starts to slip. And what you do next will matter more than you realize. Delay rarely announces itself as rebellion. It does not walk into your life wearing the label of disobedience. It comes dressed as caution. It sounds like wisdom. It feels responsible. It whispers, wait until you are more prepared. Wait until the timing feels perfect. Wait until you feel stronger. And while you wait, something invisible begins to shift. This is the silent trap of delay. It does not fight you openly. It slowly convinces you that postponement is maturity. But in seasons where heaven has already spoken, postponement is not maturity. It is misalignment. You see, procrastination in spiritual matters is rarely about laziness. It is about hesitation rooted in fear. Fear of failure. Fear of rejection. Fear of stepping into something that stretches you beyond your comfort. And fear is subtle. It disguises itself as logic. It tells you that you need one more confirmation, one more sign, one more conversation before you act. But how many confirmations does obedience require? When the instruction has already been made clear in your spirit, when the conviction keeps returning, when the same message keeps appearing in different forms, the issue is no longer clarity. The issue is courage. Archangel Michael exposes something deeper here. There is often spiritual resistance attached to moments of destiny. The closer you get to a breakthrough, the louder hesitation becomes. The more significant the assignment, the stronger the temptation to delay it. This is not coincidence. This is opposition. When you are on the edge of alignment, the enemy does not always attack you with chaos. Sometimes he simply offers you comfort. He offers you later. Because later feels safe. It feels non-committal. It allows you to avoid the risk of immediate obedience. But destiny does not wait indefinitely. It moves with those who move. Think about the pattern throughout Scripture. When instruction came, those who acted immediately saw miracles unfold. When they hesitated, they wondered. Delay has consequences not because God is harsh, but because timing matters. There are divine setups that require your participation at a precise moment. If you step in, the door swings wide. If you hesitate too long, the opportunity passes to another season. Here is how destiny collapses slowly before it collapses suddenly. First, you feel a nudge. You ignore it. Then you feel a stronger prompting. You negotiate with it. Over time, the clarity that once burned brightly begins to dim. What once felt urgent starts to feel optional. And before you realize it, the fire that was meant to propel you forward has cooled into complacency. You are not in open rebellion. You are simply stuck. And stuck seasons are often the result of delayed obedience. This is why the message is urgent. Because some of you have been sensing the same instruction for months. Some of you have been circling the same decision. You know what you need to do. You know what you need to release. You know what step you need to take. Yet you keep postponing it, waiting for the right moment. But what if the right moment is the one you are in right now? What if this message is the confirmation you have been asking for? There is also something else happening beneath the surface. Delay creates spiritual dullness. The more you ignore promptings, the quieter they seem. Not because heaven stops speaking, but because your sensitivity decreases. Obedience sharpens your hearing. Delay numbs it. And when your hearing becomes dull, direction becomes harder to discern. This is how confusion enters. Not all at once, but gradually. If this message is resonating with you, if you feel that stirring conviction rising in your spirit, do not scroll past it. Do not treat it as another video. Engage with it. Like this message as a declaration that you refuse to delay any longer. Share it with someone who needs this wake-up call. Comment and declare that you choose obedience over hesitation. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that refuses to sleep through divine moments. When you take these small actions, you are not just supporting content, you are aligning yourself publicly with the decision to move when heaven says move. The silent trap of delay thrives in isolation. It weakens when exposed. The moment you acknowledge it, the moment you call it what it is, its power begins to break. Archangel Michael is not revealing this to shame you. He's revealing it to free you. Because once you see the pattern, you can disrupt it. Once you recognize the voice of later as a thief of timing, you can silence it. Ask yourself honestly, what has God been asking of me that I have postponed? Where have I been negotiating instead of obeying? These questions are not meant to condemn. They are meant to awaken. Because awareness is the first step to restoration. And restoration begins the moment you choose differently. Delay is subtle. It is quiet. It feels reasonable. But in critical seasons, it is dangerous. Not because you are weak, but because your calling is weighty. The greater the destiny, the more decisive the obedience must be. This is not about rushing recklessly. It is about responding faithfully. When instruction is clear, hesitation becomes costly. Right now, you are standing at the edge of a decision. The trap has been exposed. The whisper of later hath been unmasked. The question is no longer whether delay is present. The question is whether you will continue to entertain it. Because the longer you sit in hesitation, the harder movement becomes. And the longer movement is postponed, the more momentum is lost. But here is the hope. The moment you act, the cycle breaks. The moment you respond, alignment begins to restore. The moment you choose obedience, destiny stabilizes again. There are moments when the warning is gentle. And then there are moments when the warning carries the weight of heaven behind it. This is that kind of moment. Archangel Michael's message is not wrapped in softness. It is wrapped in authority. It is clear. It is direct. It is uncompromising. Delay is disobedience. This is not about human imperfection. This is not about struggling to understand. This is about what happens after you already know. When instruction has been given, when conviction has been felt, when clarity has been placed in your spirit, and you still choose to postpone action, you step into dangerous territory. Not because God is eager to punish, but because alignment requires response. Archangel Michael stands as a guardian of divine order. Order means timing. Order means sequence. Order means that when heaven initiates something, there is an expected movement on earth. When that movement does not happen, the rhythm is disrupted. Imagine a door that has been unlocked specifically for you. It swings open for a window of time. But instead of walking through it, you hesitate at the threshold. You overthink. You question. You delay. The door does not remain open forever. This is what many fail to understand. The unseen doors attached to your destiny are responsive. They are not static. When obedience is swift, they widen. When obedience is postponed, they narrow. Not out of cruelty, but out of divine structure. Heaven does not force participation. It responds to willingness. Delay's disobedience means that once clarity hath been given, neutrality no longer exists. You are either moving with the instruction or resisting it. There is no middle ground in moments of divine urgency. And some of you have been attempting to stand in the middle. You have been telling yourself that because you have not said no, you are still safe. But a delayed yes can produce the same consequences as a spoken no when timing is critical. There are ripple effects when divine prompting is ignored. The first ripple is internal. Peace begins to fade. You feel unsettled, even when nothing outward seems wrong. The second ripple is momentum loss. Things that once flowed easily start to require more effort. The third ripple is confusion. Direction that once felt sharp becomes foggy. And eventually, you begin to question whether you ever heard clearly at all. But understand this: the clarity did not vanish. It was buried under delay. Archangel Michael's warning is not about condemning you for hesitation. It is about revealing the cost of continued postponement. Because the longer you ignore instruction, the easier it becomes to justify it. The easier it becomes to normalize it. And what was once a single delayed step turns into a lifestyle of slow obedience. Slow obedience, inerrancy, and disobedience. There are also unseen consequences beyond what you feel personally. Your obedience is connected to other people. There are individuals whose breakthrough is attached to your movement. There are prayers waiting on the other side of your decision. When you delay, it does not only affect you, it affects the chain of impact assigned to your life. This is why the tone is serious. This is why the title carries weight. Skip this message and watch your destiny collapse in real time is not exaggeration. It is exposure. Because collapse does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like missed timing. Sometimes it looks like lost fire. Sometimes it looks like opportunities quietly passing by. But here is the mercy in this warning. You are hearing it now. The fact that this message reached you means the door is not fully closed. The window is not completely shut. There is still space to respond. There is still time to correct course. But that space is not indefinite. The urgency you feel is real. It is not emotional manipulation. It is spiritual timing. Right now, heaven is watching for movement. Not perfection. Not grand gestures. movement, a step, a decision, a response. When you act, even in small obedience, alignment begins to restore. The ripples reverse. Peace returns. Momentum rebuilds. Clarity sharpens. But if you ignore this, if you treat this as background noise, something subtle will begin to shift again. And you may not notice it immediately. That is what makes delay so dangerous. It works quietly. So hear the warning clearly. What you do after this message matters. What you choose today sets the tone for tomorrow. Destiny is not collapsing because you are weak. It collapses when urgency is dismissed repeatedly. And before we move further, understand this. What is about to be revealed next will expose something even deeper about your current season. You will be glad you stayed for what is coming, because it connects directly to the decision forming in your heart right now. Type "I move now" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 316 is now activated. As this warning settles into your spirit, understand something powerful. When you sow into fertile ground, you participate in the harvest of souls. This channel is not just content. It is a river carrying awakening across nations. Scripture declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, and it will return to you." This is not ancient poetry. This is a living promise spoken over you now. When you give through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are lighting torches in dark places and placing oil in lamps that refuse to go out. I feel led to say this directly. I am responding to heaven's call to fuel this mission. Your seed becomes fire. Your generosity becomes open doors for someone else's breakthrough. The PayPal link is in the description, and the QR code flashes on your screen. Do not delay what God is prompting you to release. Step into this prophetic act and unlock the harvest assigned to your obedience. Destiny rarely collapses in a single dramatic moment. It begins with subtle shifts, almost invisible at first. There is no loud alarm, no sudden announcement. Instead, there is a quiet drifting, a gradual misalignment. And if you are not spiritually attentive, you can mistake these early warning signs for normal life struggles. But they are not normal. They are indicators. The first sign is the loss of spiritual momentum. There was a time when clarity came quickly, when prayer felt alive, when direction seemed sharp and undeniable. You knew what you were supposed to do. You felt the fire to do it. But after repeated delay, something changes. The urgency fades. The fire cools. What once felt pressing now feels distant. You begin to move slower, not physically, but spiritually. The passion that once drove you begins to feel like a memory instead of a present reality. The second sign is increased confusion. Decisions that once felt simple now feel complicated. You second-guess yourself. You overanalyze. You question whether you heard correctly in the first place. But confusion in these moments is not always the absence of guidance. Sometimes it is the result of postponed obedience. When you delay a clear instruction, you step slightly out of alignment. And when alignment shifts, vision blurs. Another early warning sign is spiritual heaviness. Not conviction, not a healthy correction. Heaviness, a weight that follows you, a sense that something is unfinished. You try to distract yourself. You tell yourself it will pass, but it lingers. This heaviness is often the soul's awareness that something important remains undone. Destiny carries responsibility. When responsibility is ignored, pressure builds. Then there is the sorrow of confidence. When you repeatedly hesitate to act on what you know is right, you begin to doubt your own ability to hear and respond. You start asking, am I really called? Yet I imagine that instruction. Maybe it wasn't that important. But this self-doubt is not humility. It is the byproduct of unresolved obedience. Each delayed step chips away at certainty. One of the most dangerous signs is the normalization of delay. What once felt urgent now feels optional. You grow comfortable with postponement. You tell yourself that you work better under pressure, that you are just being cautious, that timing will sort itself out. But destiny is not sustained by comfort. It is sustained by courage. And when courage is repeatedly postponed, comfort becomes a cage. There is also a relational impact. You may notice distance forming, not only between you and others, but between you and God. Prayer feels routine instead of relational. Worship feels mechanical instead of intimate. This is not because God has moved away. It is because delay creates subtle barriers. Obedience keeps connection vibrant. Hesitation dulls it. Understand this clearly. There is a difference between testing and consequence. Testing refines you while you are obeying. Consequence confronts you when you are delaying. In testing, you feel stretched but aligned. In consequence, you feel unsettled and misaligned. The enemy would love for you to confuse the two. He wants you to think that the discomfort of misalignment is just another trial you must endure. But heaven does not test you by asking you to ignore clear instruction. When instruction is clear, the next step is movement. Real-time spiritual shifts are happening constantly. When you obey, reinforcement is released. Favor aligns. Resources appear. Energy increases. But when you delay, support begins to retract, not as punishment, but as a natural response to stalled movement. Imagine trying to steer a parked car. The steering wheel moves, but the vehicle does not. Destiny requires motion. You may be recognizing yourself in these signs. Perhaps you have felt the fading fire, the growing confusion, the heaviness you cannot explain. If so, this is not a message of condemnation. It is an invitation to awareness. The collapse of destiny begins quietly, but restoration can begin just as quietly, with a single act of obedience. The good news is this: early warning signs mean it is not too late. Collapse is a process, and processes can be interrupted. The same way repeated delay created instability. Repeated obedience to rebuild strength. When you choose to act today, momentum begins to return. Clarity sharpens again. Peace re-enters. Confidence rebuilds. But here is what makes this season critical. The longer early warning signs are ignored, the more dramatic the correction must become. Gentle conviction can turn into stronger disruption if necessary. Not because God desires to harm you, but because destiny is too valuable to let drift without intervention. Sometimes heaven shakes when you refuse to move. Right now, you are in the awareness stage. You are seeing the cracks before they widen. You are recognizing the drift before it becomes distance. This is mercy. Mercy speaks before collapse becomes visible to everyone around you. Ask yourself honestly, have I felt these signs? Have I sensed the fading momentum? Have I ignored the heaviness? Awareness demands response. Once you see it, you cannot pretend you do not. And that is where change begins. Destiny does not crumble overnight. It destabilizes through small, repeated moments of hesitation. But stability can be restored through small, repeated moments of obedience. The question is not whether cracks have formed. The question is whether you will repair them now. Because the moment destiny begins to collapse is also the moment you are given the chance to rebuild. And what you choose in this season will determine whether the cracks spread or whether the foundation strengthens again. There are millions of voices speaking every single day, millions of videos, millions of messages, endless noise competing for your attention. And yet, out of all of that, this message found you. Not yesterday, not next week, today. That is not random. That is not coincidence. That is orchestration. You may think you clicked because of curiosity, because of the bold title, because something about it caught your eye, but beneath your conscious decision was something deeper at work. Heaven knows how to interrupt your scrolling. Heaven knows how to place a message directly in your path at the precise moment you need it. Divine timing does not require your awareness to be effective. It simply requires your presence. There are seasons when God whispers gently, and there are seasons when He disrupts your routine. This is a disruption season. You were moving through your day, perhaps distracted, perhaps busy, perhaps overwhelmed. And suddenly, this message confronted you with urgency. That interruption is not accidental. It is intentional mercy. Sometimes we ask for confirmation, and when it comes, we overlook it because it does not arrive the way we expected. You may have been praying silently for clarity, asking for direction, wondering whether the conviction you have been feeling is truly from God. And then this message appears with language so direct it almost startles you. That is not manipulation. That is alignment. You are not scrolling accidentally. You were being intercepted. There are divine interceptions that happen in critical seasons, moments where heaven steps into your normal flow and redirects your attention. It may feel abrupt. It may feel intense, but it is protective. When you are approaching a dangerous drift, mercy steps in before the fall becomes visible. Think about it. What are the odds that the exact words you needed to hear would appear right when you were wrestling with delay? What are the odds that a message about urgency would confront you in the middle of hesitation? This is not algorithm alone. This is assignment. God will use any channel to reach you. A conversation, a scripture, a dream, even a video. The method is not as important as the message. And when the message carries this level of clarity, it means heaven is pressing in. There is also responsibility attached to revelation. Once you know, you cannot unknow. Once light shines, you cannot pretend darkness remains. This message found you because you are accountable for what it carries. Not in a condemning way, in an empowering way. Awareness gives you the power to change direction. You may have been telling yourself that you need more time, more confirmation, more preparation. But what if this is the confirmation? What if this is the answer to the prayer you prayed privately? What if the urgency you feel right now is the final nudge you were waiting for? There are moments in life that divide seasons. Before and after moments. This could be one of them. The day you stopped delaying. The day you responded immediately. The day you decided that obedience would no longer be postponed. Heaven does not waste warnings. If this reached you, it means something is at stake. Something valuable. Something assigned to your name. The enemy would prefer you scroll past it. Dismiss it. Minimize it. Because dismissal maintains delay, and delay maintains drift. But something in you paused. Something in you felt the weight of it. That pause is significant. It means your spirit recognized truth before your mind fully processed it. That recognition is evidence of divine communication. There is also another layer to this interception. Timing. You are in a narrow window. A transitional space between where you have been and where you are meant to step. Transitional spaces are fragile. They require decisiveness. If you move forward, the next season unlocks. If you hesitate, you remain suspended. This message is not here to pressure you into panic. It is here to awaken precision. You are being given the opportunity to act while the door is still open. That is mercy. Some people never receive warnings. They drift until consequences force correction. But you are being alerted early. That means you are valued. That means your destiny is important enough to interrupt your routine. Ask yourself honestly, what was I thinking about right before I clicked this? What decision has been circling my mind lately? What instruction have I been negotiating with? The answer to those questions is connected to why this message found you today. You are not here by accident. You are here because something in your timeline required confrontation. And confrontation, when rooted in love, is protection. The fact that you are still listening means you are not beyond course correction. It means your heart is still responsive. It means obedience is still possible. And that is the most powerful realization of all. This message found you today because today matters. Because this moment matters. Because your next step matters more than you realize. The only question now is what you will do with what you have heard. There is a dangerous assumption many people carry, that if they ignore a warning, nothing immediate will happen. That silence means safety. That because the sky does not fall the moment they dismiss instruction, the instruction must not have been urgent. But spiritual consequences rarely explode on impact. They unfold gradually. And the cost of skipping what God sends is rarely visible at first glance. When heaven sends a warning, it is never casual. It is intentional. It is protective. To ignore it is not simply to miss information. It is to reject intervention. And intervention is often the very thing standing between you and unnecessary hardship. The first cost of skipping divine instruction is the slow erosion of calling. Calling is not just a title. It is not a platform. It is not a dream. Calling is alignment between your purpose and your obedience. When obedience is delayed repeatedly, calling begins to feel distant. You still remember it. You still talk about it. But it feels less alive, less urgent, less possible. You start adjusting your expectations. You begin settling in subtle ways. Not because you consciously chose to abandon your destiny, but because repeated delay weakened your spiritual stamina. Fire untended eventually dims. Vision unpursued gradually blurs. Another cost is misalignment. There are divine appointments scheduled in the spirit before you ever recognize them in the natural. Conversations you are meant to have. Rooms you are meant to enter. Opportunities designed specifically for your obedience. But these alignments are often time-sensitive. When you delay, you may still move forward eventually, but the original synergy is lost. Imagine arriving at a station after the train has already departed. The destination still exists, but the ease, the timing, the momentum of that particular departure is gone. And now the journey requires more effort, more waiting, more rebuilding. That is what delayed obedience does. It complicates what could have been smoother. There is also a generational impact attached to obedience. Many people think their delay affects only them. But destiny is rarely isolated. Your obedience opens doors not only for you, but for those connected to you. Family, friends, even future generations. When you postpone what God has instructed, you are not only delaying your breakthrough, you may be postponing someone else's answer. The enemy understands this deeply. That is why he does not always need to destroy you outright. If he can simply keep you hesitating, negotiating, postponing, he achieves his objective quietly. Delay becomes the thief of multiplication. It steals impact without dramatic warfare. Another cost is spiritual sensitivity. The more you ignore warnings, the easier it becomes to rationalize them away. You begin explaining conviction instead of responding to it. You analyze instead of acting. Over time, your reflex to obey weakens. What once would have triggered immediate action now triggers internal debate. And here is the sobering truth. Repeated exposure to ignored instruction can lead to desensitization. Not because God stops speaking, but because your responsiveness dulls. You do not lose your calling overnight. You lose urgency first. There is also an emotional toll. Skipping what God sends often creates internal conflict. You feel unsettled, but you cannot fully explain why. You experience restlessness even when circumstances appear stable. That unrest is not random anxiety. It is the friction between what you know you should do and what you are postponing. Peace follows obedience. Turbulence often follows delay. Some people interpret this turbulence as spiritual attack, when in reality it is spiritual misalignment. Attack and misalignment feel similar, but their origins differ. Attack occurs when you are advancing. Misalignment occurs when you are hesitating. One requires resistance. The other requires repentance and movement. Skipping divine messages also weakens spiritual authority. Authority flows from alignment. When you walk in step with instruction, confidence strengthens. Boldness increases. But when you repeatedly sidestep instruction, hesitation seeps into other areas of your life. You begin second-guessing decisions that once felt simple. But hear this clearly, the cost of skipping what God sends is not irreversible. It is serious, but it is not final. The warning itself is evidence of mercy. You are being shown the potential cost before the full weight of consequence lands. That is grace. Right now, you stand in a moment of evaluation. Not condemnation. Evaluation. You are being given the opportunity to respond before erosion becomes collapse. Before drift becomes distance. Before dimming becomes darkness. Ask yourself, what have I been skipping? What conversations have I avoided? What steps have I postponed? What obedience have I categorized as optional? These questions are not here to shame you. They are here to restore you. Because the moment you stop skipping, momentum begins returning. The moment you say yes without delay, alignment strengthens again. The moment you act, the cost begins reversing. The truth is this: God sends warnings because your destiny matters. He intervenes because your path carries weight. He speaks because what is ahead of you is too valuable to lose through hesitation. The cost of skipping what God sends is high, but the reward of responding is higher. And you still have the chance to choose. There comes a point when awareness is no longer enough. You have recognized the delay. You have identified the hesitation. You have felt the weight of misalignment. But recognition without action keeps you in the same cycle. And cycles, if not broken intentionally, repeat themselves with greater intensity. This is the moment where you stop analyzing and start dismantling the pattern. Hesitation is rarely about laziness. It is about fear dressed as wisdom. It sounds responsible. It sounds cautious. It sounds strategic. But beneath it is a quiet dread of stepping into the unknown. Fear asks, what if I fail? Obedience asks, what if I don't move? Fear focuses on risk. Obedience focuses on trust. To break the cycle of hesitation, you must first expose the agreement you have unknowingly made with delay. Every time you postponed action, you reinforced a belief. I still have time. It can wait. This isn't urgent. Those thoughts formed a pattern. And patterns, once repeated, become habits. But habits can be confronted. The first step in breaking hesitation is clarity, not vague intention. Specific clarity. What exactly have you been delaying? Name it. Is it a conversation? A decision? A release? A step into something new? When you define it clearly, it loses some of its power over you. Undefined fear feels massive. Defined action feels manageable. The second step is reject imperfectionism. Many people delay because they believe they must be fully prepared before they move. They want every detail mapped out, every risk minimized, every uncertainty resolved. But destiny rarely unfolds with complete visibility. It unfolds through progressive obedience. You move, then clarity increases. You step, then direction sharpens. Perfectionism keeps you parked. Obedience moves you forward. The third step is accepting discomfort. Breaking hesitation will not feel comfortable. If it did, you would have already done it. There will be resistance. There will be internal arguments. There will be a moment where everything in you wants to retreat to familiarity. That moment is the threshold. If you push through it, the cycle cracks. Understand something powerful. Momentum is built through movement, not motivation. Many people wait until they feel ready, but readiness often follows action, not the other way around. When you take the first obedient step, strength rises to meet it. Courage expands as you use it. There is also a spiritual repositioning that must happen. You cannot break hesitation while still entertaining doubt as your primary advisor. You must shift your posture from negotiation to surrender. Instead of asking, "Is this really necessary?" begin asking, "How quickly can I align?" That shift changes everything. Breaking hesitation also requires accountability. Silence protects delay. Exposure weakens it. When you declare your intention to act, whether to God in prayer or even to someone you trust, you create pressure against retreat. You make it harder to quietly slip back into postponement. You must also confront the lie that small steps do not matter. The enemy convinces many people that if they cannot take a massive leap, they should take no step at all. But destiny often turns on small acts of obedience. A phone call, an apology, a resignation, a registration, a prayer of repentance, a boundary set. These may seem simple, but they shift trajectories. Do not underestimate the power of one decisive action. There is another truth you must internalize. Obedience restores authority. When you act quickly on instruction, you rebuild spiritual confidence. You remind yourself that you are capable of responding to conviction, that you are not enslaved to hesitation. Each obedient act strengthens your reflex to obey again. The cycle of hesitation weakens every time you override it. You may be wondering, what if I have delayed for too long? The answer is this: as long as you are aware and willing, the cycle can still be broken. The length of delay does not determine the possibility of restoration. Your decision does. Right now, imagine yourself 6 months from today. In one version, you continue hesitating. You remain in the same tension, the same internal debate, the same frustration. In another version, you break the cycle today. You act. You align. You move. Which version carries peace? Which version carries growth? Hesitation promises safety but delivers stagnation. Obedience may feel risky, but it produces movement. The cycle ends when you decide that delay is no longer an option. When you stop negotiating with fear. when you accept that clarity has already been given, when you understand that waiting for comfort is waiting for something that may never arrive. Breaking hesitation is not dramatic. It is decisive. It is the moment you say, enough. The moment you choose action over analysis. The moment you trust that the God who instructed you will sustain you. You do not need another sign. You need a step. And when you take it, you will feel something shift immediately. The weight will lift. The fog will thin. The heaviness will ease. Not because everything changes overnight, but because alignment begins. This is where the cycle breaks. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. There are two kinds of time operating in your life right now. One is ordinary time, the ticking of clocks, the turning of calendars, the routine rhythm of days blending into weeks. The other is sacred time, a divine window, a moment charged with opportunity that will not remain open indefinitely. And this message is confronting you because you are standing inside one of those windows. Sacred windows do not last forever. They are invitations wrapped in urgency. They are seasons where heaven aligns circumstances, conviction, resources, and revelation all at once. When you step through during that alignment, progress feels accelerated. When you hesitate too long, the alignment shifts. Many people assume that if a door is meant for them, it will stay open permanently. But that is not how divine timing works. Some doors are seasonal. Some instructions are time-sensitive. Some breakthroughs require immediate participation. The window you are in right now is not about pressure. It is about precision. You may feel it in your spirit, a subtle countdown. Not a number you can see, but a sense that something is moving. That sense is not anxiety. It is awareness. Heaven is highlighting that this is not an ordinary moment. There are opportunities that, once missed, do not return in the same form. Yes, God is merciful. Yes, restoration is possible. But not every missed door reopens identically. Sometimes the lesson repeats, but the ease does not. Sometimes the assignment remains, but the timing changes. This is why delay in sacred windows is costly. Not because God withdraws love, but because seasons transition. When harvest time arrives, action must follow. Farmers do not negotiate with harvest. They respond. If they wait too long, the crop spoils, not because the seed was bad, but because the timing was ignored. Right now, you are in a Kairos moment, a divinely appointed opportunity layered into your ordinary schedule. You did not plan it. You may not have expected it. But it is here, and the instruction attached to it is clear. A window is not closing out of punishment. It is closing because seasons move forward. Life does not pause while you decide. Destiny does not freeze in place. Movement continues either with you or without you. But here is the hope. Windows also amplify acceleration. When you act within them, things that would normally take years can shift in months. Alignment creates speed. Obedience unlocks momentum. What felt stagnant suddenly flows. Some of you have been praying for acceleration. You have asked God to move faster, to open doors, to shift circumstances. But acceleration requires cooperation. When the door opens, you must walk through it. Acceleration is not passive. It is responsive. If you hesitate in a sacred window, frustration increases. You feel stuck because you are resisting the very movement that would free you. The tension you feel right now is not random. It is the friction between opportunity and delay. But listen carefully. The fact that you are hearing this means the window is still open. Narrowing, perhaps, but open. That is mercy speaking again. Mercy does not scream forever. It alerts, then waits for response. There is something deeply personal about this season for you. This is not a generic call to action. There is a specific instruction attached to your life. A step you already know. A conversation you have avoided. A change you have postponed. The window is connected to that. And here is the reality that may unsettle you. Some doors do not reopen once closed. Not because God is unwilling, but because seasons advance. Childhood does not return. Certain opportunities tied to age, timing, or alignment are unique. You are being invited to move while the invitation is active. You may feel fear rising as you consider stepping forward. That fear is not proof that you should wait. It is proof that the step matters. Small decisions rarely trigger intense resistance. Significant ones do. Heaven is not asking you for perfection. It is asking you for movement. Right now, choose to see this moment clearly. Not emotionally. Not impulsively. Clearly. This is a window that carries consequence and reward. Delay leads to contraction. Obedience leads to expansion. And what comes next will reveal why this particular window is more critical than you realize. There is a connection between your obedience now and something unfolding in the near future that you can't yet see. You will be grateful you remained attentive, because the next revelation ties directly to what you are sensing in your spirit at this very moment. Type "My time is now" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 842 is now activated. As you stand in this sacred window, understand this. When you sow into fertile soil during a divine season, harvest multiplies beyond what you imagine. This channel is more than a message. It is a field where seeds of awakening are planted daily. The word declares, "Give, and it will be given back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over." This promise is alive, speaking directly into your obedience. I feel this strongly. I am stepping into this window and fueling the spread of God's voice. When you release a super thanks, join as a member, or sow through the PayPal link in the description, or even scan the QR code flashing on your screen, you are pouring oil into a lamp that refuses to go dark. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic seed in a time season. As you give, may acceleration meet you, may doors open swiftly, and may favor pursue you. Act now and seal this moment with obedience. There are moments in life when the path forward splits clearly in two. No fog, open view, and just a visible fork in the road. One direction is familiar, comfortable, and predictable. The other is demanding, decisive, and transformative. This is one of those moments. You are standing at a spiritual crossroads, and the choice before you is not small. It is obedience or collapse. Collapse does not mean instant ruin. It means gradual deterioration. It means potential shrinking instead of expanding. It means settling into a version of your life that is far beneath what was intended. Obedience, on the other hand, means stepping into alignment even when your emotions are still catching up. Right now, the decision is not theoretical. It is practical. It is attached to a real step, a real action, a real change. You already know what it is. The Holy Spirit does not deal in vague impressions when urgency is present. The instruction has likely been repeating itself in your thoughts. That repetition is not coincidence. It is confirmation. At this crossroads, you cannot remain neutral. Standing still is, in itself, a direction. And often, is the direction of slow collapse. Not because God abandons you, but because destiny requires participation. You cannot inherit what you refuse to move toward. Imagine two versions of your future unfolding side by side. In one, you choose immediate obedience. You make the call. You take the step. You release what needs to be released. You initiate what needs to be initiated. It feels uncomfortable at first, but clarity follows. Strength follows. Momentum begins building almost immediately. In the other version, you hesitate again. You tell yourself you will revisit the decision next week. You seek more reassurance. You wait for emotions to settle. Weeks pass. The urgency fades slightly. Life fills in the space where obedience once pressed. And slowly, the fire dims. Not dramatically. Gradually. This is what collapse looks like. It is not always loud. It is quiet compromise. Obedience, however, creates a domino effect. One decisive act shifts your posture. That posture shift changes your confidence. That confidence influences your next decision. And suddenly, what felt intimidating becomes normal. What felt impossible becomes achievable. One bold step often unlocks a chain reaction of transformation. The enemy fears decisive obedience, not because of the single step itself, but because of what that step activates. When you move in alignment, reinforcement is released in the unseen realm. Resources align. Support appears. Ideas flow. Courage increases. But none of that activates while you remain parked at the crossroads. You may be waiting for absolute certainty, but obedience is rarely accompanied by complete emotional comfort. It is accompanied by conviction, and conviction is already present. The collapse you are being warned about is not inevitable. It is renditional. It depends on your response. Destiny does not crumble because you are flawed. It destabilizes when repeated opportunities for alignment are ignored. Right now, you are being given a clear choice. Not in 6 months. Not after more signs. Now. And let me say this clearly. Choosing obedience does not mean you will not face challenges. It means you will face them aligned. There is a difference between struggling in alignment and struggling in avoidance. In alignment, challenges refine you. In avoidance, they drain you. The fork in the road is before you. The cost of obedience may be discomfort. The cost of delay may be destiny erosion. One cost is temporary. The other compounds over time. If this message has stirred something in you, do not internalize it silently. Engage with it. Declare your choice. Like this video as a visible sign that you refuse to delay any longer. Share it with someone who may also be standing at a crossroads. Comment boldly that you choose obedience over hesitation. And if you have not already, subscribe and become part of a community that responds when heaven speaks. Your engagement is not just interaction. It is declaration. Do not underestimate the power of a declared decision. When you speak it, you solidify it. And here is something critical. What you decide in the next 24 hours matters more than what you have delayed in the past 24 months. Immediate correction carries weight. Immediate alignment restores strength. You may feel the intensity of this moment. That intensity is not pressure from man. It is urgency from heaven. You are not being threatened with collapse. You are being warned so that collapse can be avoided. And if you are wondering whether this really applies to you, the very fact that you are still listening is your answer. In the next part, something will be revealed about restoration that many people misunderstand. Because even at the crossroads, mercy remains available. But the timing of that mercy connects directly to what you choose now. The fork is before you. Obedience or collapse. Choose. There is a powerful truth that must be understood at this crossroads. Obedience does not only prevent collapse, it activates restoration. Many people believe restoration is automatic, that time alone heals drift, that eventually things will realign on their own. But restoration in the kingdom of God is not passive. It is responsive. It is reserved for those who return, who respond, who realign. You may be listening right now with a heavy heart, thinking, I have already delayed too long. I have already missed my window. I have already felt things slip. But hear this clearly. As long as breath remains in your body and conviction remains in your spirit, restoration is still within reach. The question is not whether restoration exists. The question is whether you will position yourself to receive it. Restoration does not begin with regret. It begins with repentance and action. Regret looks backward and mourns what was lost. Repentance turns around and moves forward differently. The moment you choose obedience, even after delay, you signal heaven that you are ready to realign. And heaven responds to movement. There is a divine principle at work here. What obedience lost in hesitation can be accelerated through surrender. God is not limited by time the way you are. What you delayed for months can begin shifting in days once you align. But acceleration requires participation. Think about a ship that drifted slightly off course. The captain does not abandon the journey. He adjusts the direction. That adjustment may seem small, but over distance, it changes everything. Your obedience today is that course correction. It may feel like one step, but over time it redirects your entire trajectory. Restoration also rebuilds confidence. When you act decisively after a season of hesitation, you remind yourself that you are not trapped in delay. You prove that obedience is still possible. That realization strengthens you. It restores spiritual authority. It sharpens your hearing again. Many people misunderstand mercy. They think mercy excuses delay. But true mercy empowers change. It confronts gently but clearly. It provides a path back to alignment. Right now, mercy is speaking to you. It is not accusing you of failure. It is inviting you into restoration. Restoration does not always look dramatic at first. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a prayer of surrender, with a difficult conversation, with a bold decision you have postponed. But the spiritual atmosphere shifts the moment you move. Peace begins to return. Clarity sharpens. The heaviness that lingered starts lifting. There is also something supernatural about obedient restoration. Lost time can be redeemed. This does not mean every missed opportunity returns in the same form. But it does mean God has the ability to compress progress, to restore years through seasons of rapid alignment, to rebuild what felt fractured. However, this redemption is not activated by intention alone. It is activated by decisive action. The obedient experience restoration because they respond when warned. They do not stay paralyzed by guilt. They do not hide in shame. They stand up and step forward. You may be thinking, but what if the damage is already visible? Restoration is not intimidated by visibility. It works from the inside out. When alignment is restored internally, external evidence follows over time. There is a powerful exchange happening in this moment. If you choose obedience, hesitation loses authority. If you choose surrender, confusion loses ground. If you choose movement, stagnation begins to dissolve. And here is something many overlook. Restoration often feels uncomfortable at first because it requires humility. It requires admitting that delay occurred. It requires releasing pride. But humility is the gateway to acceleration. When you humble yourself and realign, heaven lifts you. The enemy would prefer you remain stuck in self-condemnation. He would rather you say, "It's too late," than say, "I will move now." Because the moment you move, his grip weakens. Restoration is not a distant hope. It is a present possibility, but it is tied to obedience. Right now, imagine what your life could look like 6 months from now if you respond immediately. Imagine the clarity restored, the momentum rebuilt, the peace returned. That future is not fantasy. It is the natural outcome of alignment. God is not looking for perfect performance. He is looking for willing hearts, and willingness is proven through action. If you have delayed, you are not disqualified. You are being invited back into position. If you have hesitated, you are not rejected. You are being redirected. But the redirection depends on your choice. Restoration is reserved for the obedient, not because God plays favorites, but because obedience positions you under flow. When you step into alignment, you step under grace designed for that path. The warning brought you to awareness. The crossroads demanded a decision. Now restoration stands before you as a promise. The next step you take will determine whether that promise becomes your reality. There is a moment, almost invisible to the natural eye, when everything begins to shift. It does not always come with thunder. It does not always arrive with dramatic signs. Sometimes it happens in the quiet space between conviction and decision. The instant you say yes. The instant you choose obedience. The instant you move. That is when the shift begins in real time. Many people expect transformation to feel explosive. They imagine immediate fireworks, overwhelming emotion, undeniable confirmation. But often, the most powerful spiritual shifts are subtle at first. They are internal before they are external. They begin in posture before they appear in circumstances. The moment you choose obedience, alignment recalibrates. It is like a compass snapping back to true north. For weeks, maybe months, you felt slightly off, unsettled, unsure, heavy. But when you act on what you know, something stabilizes. The internal tension that lingered starts to dissolve. Peace, even if faint, re-enters. This is not psychological relief. It is spiritual realignment. When Archangel Michael warned that delay is disobedience, it was not to threaten collapse, it was to prevent it. And when you respond to that warning, reinforcement is released. Heaven responds to movement. The unseen realm reacts to obedience. Assistance that felt distant begins to draw near again. You may not see angels. You may not hear audible confirmation. But support strengthens. Courage increases. Focus sharpens. Ideas begin flowing where confusion once lingered. That is the shift. Real-time change also affects your spiritual atmosphere. Before obedience, prayer may have felt strained. Worship may have felt mechanical. But after alignment, connection feels cleaner, clearer. Not because God moved closer, but because you removed the resistance. Resistance is heavy. Surrender is light. There is also a restoration of authority. When you hesitate repeatedly, doubt creeps in. You question your discernment. You question your strength. But when you act decisively, you remind yourself that you are capable of responding to conviction. Confidence returns, not prideful confidence, but anchored assurance. The enemy loses leverage when you obey. Understand something profound. The shift does not wait for perfection. It waits for movement. The moment you take the step you have been delaying, whether it is repentance, reconciliation, release, or initiation, grace meets you there. Not later. There. And here is where many miss the miracle. The real-time shift is often more significant in the unseen than in the seen. Foundations are reinforced before walls are rebuilt. Roots strengthen before fruit appears. Just because external evidence takes time does not mean internal transformation has not already begun. You may still face challenges after obedience, but those challenges feel different. They no longer feel like punishment or drift. They feel purposeful. When aligned, even struggle carries direction. Another real-time shift occurs in momentum. Delay stalls momentum. Obedience restarts it. Once movement begins, additional steps become easier. What felt paralyzing becomes manageable. What felt impossible becomes actionable. Think about a car that has been parked for months. The first start may feel slow, but once the engine turns over, motion becomes natural again. At first ignition, that is obedience. And here is something deeply encouraging. Collapse can happen gradually, but restoration can accelerate suddenly. The same spiritual law that allowed drift to accumulate allows alignment to compound. When you choose obedience consistently, growth multiplies. You may look back and realize that what felt like a massive spiritual obstacle was held in place by one delayed decision. And when that decision is finally made, the obstacle weakens. This is why the warning was urgent. Because the shift is available now. You are not waiting on heaven to move. Heaven has already spoken. It is waiting on your response. And if you have responded, even quietly, even internally, you have already initiated change. Some of you may be feeling it as you listen. A subtle lift, a quiet resolve, a clarity that was missing before. That is the beginning of the shift, and it is happening in real time. Do not dismiss small changes. Do not underestimate quiet peace. The dramatic will follow the decisive. What you do consistently from this point forward will determine the strength of this new alignment. Obedience is not a single event. It is a posture. But the posture begins with a moment. You are in that moment now. And as we move into the final part, there is one more truth that must be sealed over your life. Because this warning was never about fear. It was about preservation. It was about protection. It was about ensuring that your destiny does not collapse but stabilizes and rises. The shift has begun. You have reached the end of this message, but this is not an ending. It is a commissioning. From the very beginning, the warning was clear. Do not watch this later. Delay is disobedience. Skip this message and watch your destiny collapse in real time. But now you understand something deeper. The warning was never about fear. It was about preservation. It was about awakening you before drift became destruction. It was about confronting hesitation before it hardened into loss. And here is the assurance heaven wants you to carry. Your destiny is not destroyed. It is defended. Archangel Michael's message was not sent to condemn you. It was sent to correct your trajectory. Correction is not rejection. It is protection. The very fact that you heard this, felt it, wrestled with it, and remained through it is proof that your heart is still responsive. And a responsive heart is powerful in the hands of God. If you have chosen obedience during this message, whether quietly in your spirit or through a decisive action already taken, know this. The shift is already in motion. What felt unstable is stabilizing. What felt uncertain is clarifying. What felt heavy is lifting. Destiny does not collapse when obedience rises. You may still face resistance. You may still encounter opposition. But resistance after alignment is different than resistance in delay. When you are aligned, you are fortified. When you are obedient, you are covered. There is reinforcement around you that you cannot see. This is your final charge. Do not return to hesitation. The enemy will attempt to whisper again tomorrow. He will suggest that you overreacted, that you were too intense, that you can slow down now. But remember what you felt during this message. Remember the conviction. Remember the clarity. Remember the urgency. That was not manipulation. That was divine intervention. Guard this alignment. Obedience is not a one-time decision. It is a lifestyle of responsiveness. When conviction comes, answer it quickly. When instruction is clear, act on it swiftly. Do not negotiate with what heaven has already spoken. There is also something else you must understand. God is not looking for flawless performance. He is looking for faithful response. If you stumble, realign quickly. If you hesitate briefly, correct it immediately. The power is not in never missing a step. The power is in refusing to stay misaligned. Your destiny carries weight. It carries influence. It carries impact beyond what you currently see. That is why the warning was intense. Significant assignments require decisive obedience. But now hear the promise. Acceleration follows alignment. As you walk forward from this moment, expect clarity to increase. Expect doors to respond. Expect momentum to rebuild. Not because you earn it through perfection, but because you step back into position through obedience. Heaven fights for those who align with instruction. And if fear tries to revisit you, remind yourself of this truth. Obedience does not eliminate challenge, but it eliminates collapse. When you are aligned, even challenges serve your growth. You are not fragile. You are being fortified. You are not late beyond recovery. You were intercepted in time. You are not on the brink of destruction. You were standing at the edge of correction, and you chose to step back into alignment. Let this moment mark a line in your life. Before and after. Before hesitation ruled. After obedience leads. Before delay defined you. After decisiveness shapes you. This is not hype. This is posture. And now, as we seal this message, receive this assurance. The same God who warned you is the God who sustains you. The same voice that confronted you is the voice that covers you. The same urgency that shook you is the grace that strengthens you. Stand firm. Move quickly when prompted. Guard your alignment. Type I choose obedience in the comments if this message has marked you. Blessing code 911 is now activated. As this prophetic charge settles over you, understand this. When you partner with what God is doing, you multiply its reach beyond what you can see. This channel is not built on entertainment. It is built on awakening. The word declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy," and that promise is speaking directly into this moment. I hear this in my spirit. I will fuel the spread of God's warning and mercy. When you release a super thanks, stand as a member, or sow through the PayPal link in the description, or scan the QR code flashing on your screen. You are planting into fertile soil that is carrying light into dark places. This is not about supporting a platform. It is about advancing a mandate. As you give, may provision chase you, may protection surround you, and may favor rest upon your household. Step into this act of obedience now and seal what God has begun in you.